You ever stop and wonder why the delete button is almost always red, or why your banking app is probably blue? Yeah, that's not an accident. We're about to pull back the curtain on the hidden language of color in all the apps and websites we use every single day. And you're going to see it's not just about making things look pretty, it's about making them work. All right, here's the plan. We're going to start by totally debunking the idea that color is just for decoration. Then, we'll dive into the psychology of why certain colors make us feel things. After that, we'll look at how the pros build a real color system, talk about the super important topic of designing for everyone, and we'll wrap it all up with the common mistakes you'll want to avoid. Okay, first things first, let's get this biggest misconception out of the way. In the world of UI design, color isn't just a splash of paint you throw on at the end. Nope, it's a seriously powerful tool for communication. So let me just ask you straight up. When you see a really colorful app, is your first thought that it's just about looking good? Just pure aesthetics? Well, as you've probably guessed by now, the answer is a huge, resounding no. So if it's not just for looks, what are the real jobs of color? Well, it's communicating really important info. It's showing you what to pay attention to. It's setting an emotional tone. It's guiding you to take an action. And maybe most importantly, it's making sure that interface is actually usable for everyone. Right, so if a color's main job is to communicate, what is it actually saying? This is where things get really interesting because that brings us to color psychology, the way different colors send these subtle and sometimes not so subtle signals that totally influence how we feel and what we do. And you see these associations literally everywhere. Blue, that's all about trust and stability, which is why every bank and big tech company loves it. Green means success, right? Think about that payment sent confirmation. Red is pretty much a universal sign for whoa, stop, or danger, protecting you from accidentally deleting something important. And yellow, well, that's for grabbing your attention with a warning. But, and this is a huge but, you can't just follow some simple rulebook. This is critical. A color's meaning can change, like dramatically, depending on the culture or the context. So the number one rule for any professional is this: never, ever rely on psychology alone. You always have to test your designs with actual people. So if you're not just picking colors based on a vibe, how in the world do you actually do it? Well, that leads us to building a color system. This is the structured, thoughtful approach that separates, amazing design from just amateur guesswork. So a basic system usually has three parts. First, you've got your primary colors. That's your main brand color, the one you use for the most important buttons. Then you've got secondary colors, which are there to support the primary ones, for less critical stuff. And finally, you have your neutrals. We're talking grays, whites, off-whites, the very foundation of the whole thing. Okay, so here's a little pop quiz for you. Out of those three categories, primary, secondary, and neutral, which one do you think takes up the most real estate on the average screen? The bright, exciting primary color, the secondary accents, or those kind of boring neutrals? The answer, and this one surprises a lot of people, is almost always the neutrals. A whopping 80 to 90% of most great interfaces are just neutral colors. Kind of wild, right? The colors we barely even notice are the ones doing almost all of the heavy lifting. So what's the deal with that? It's because neutrals are the true unsung heroes of UI design. They create all that breathing room so a screen doesn't feel cluttered. They're the backbone of readability for your text. They help you focus on the important stuff, the content. And, crucially, they create this calm stage that lets those bright primary colors really pop and do their job. It's simple. If everything is loud, nothing is. Now, all this talk about making things clear and easy to focus on, it leads us straight to a topic that is absolutely essential: designing for everyone. And let's be clear, this isn't some optional nice to have. Accessibility is a non-negotiable core part of being a professional. Just look at this. The most basic piece of accessible color design is contrast. On the left, you've got that light gray text on a white background. For a lot of people, that is a real struggle to read. But on the right, that high contrast dark gray on white is just effortless. It's a night and day difference, and that single choice can make or break whether your product is actually usable. So what are the basic rules to live by? First, your text has to have strong contrast against its background. And the smaller the text, the more contrast you're going to need. Second, and this one is so important, never ever use color alone to communicate something critical. You always need a backup, like an icon or some text, because you can't assume everyone sees color the same way you do. All right, let's bring this all home. For a final section, we're going to look at the most common color mistakes. These are the classic traps that beginners fall into all the time. But after this, you'll be able to spot them from a mile away. So what should you avoid? First, what I call the rainbow explosion, using way too many bright colors. It just creates chaos. Second, having no clear color hierarchy, which leaves your users totally lost about what's important. Third, as we just covered, using low contrast text that's impossible to read. And finally, being inconsistent. If red means error on one page and go on another, you're just building a confusing mess. And all of that brings us to our final and probably most important idea of the day. A great designer once said, UI designers design systems, not palettes. Think about that. A palette is just a random collection of colors that look nice together. A system is a set of intentional rules and deliberate choices that create clarity, meaning, and usability. So the next time you open an app, try to look past the pretty colors and see the system underneath. What is it really trying to tell you?
Like, share, and subscribe.